Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to proposed American states that didn't make it. Now, this is going to be interesting because, from what I know about the US, the US, parts of it used to be owned by Spain, Britain, and I think the Netherlands owned a part of that territory of land there, and the US obviously, got that land back, and then those territories were divided up over time, and that became the 50 states that we know now. But I think certain states that people wanted more divisions to happen. So I think I read somewhere that they wanted Texas to split up at some point. But this video here, I'm hoping it's gonna just explain all the times that more states have been proposed. Why maybe? I just don't imagine. I can't understand why you'd want to split certain states up. I guess you'd get another senator, wouldn't you? If you took one state and split it, there'd be two senators, there'd be two governors. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But this video should be fun. Let's do it.
America, or the United States, a country in North America that has 50 states, although maybe that number will grow to 51 soon. Nobody knows all 50 states unless you're Ross from Friends, and not even him because he cheats and puts one of them twice. But even if it's hard to know all of them by memory, there are 50 states. However, this number could be different, and the way that the US state map looks could also have been significantly different than it is now. This is because throughout history, many other states were proposed, but a lot were never created. So in this video, we're taking a look at the proposed states of America.
That's Texas, right? It's huge, isn't it? Texas has got to be, because Alaska's not in this picture. I was going to say Texas is probably the biggest state, right?
Which never existed. Before we start, a quick mention that this video is sponsored by NordVPN. I'll talk about them later on in the video. But now let's get started. First, the state of Franklin, proposed in 1784.
Benjamin Franklin?
This one actually existed from 1784 to 1788, but it was always unrecognized. So its existence as a state wasn't official. It was also known as the Free Republic of Franklin, and it was located in what is now eastern Tennessee. Franklin was created from part of the territory west of the Appalachian Mountains that had been offered by North Carolina as a cession to Congress to help pay off debts. It was founded with the intent of becoming the 14th state of the new United States. Apparently the name was chosen after Benjamin Franklin, whom the frontiersmen sought the support of to legitimize their own state. But Franklin declined, stating in a letter, "I am sensible of the honor which your excellency and your council thereby do me. But being in Europe when your state was formed, I am too little acquainted with the circumstances to be able to offer you anything." By 1789, the territory was back under the control of North Carolina, and soon after, it became the Southwest Territory, the precursor to the state of Tennessee. Then we have the state of Delmarva.
It's weird, I can't really imagine a state called Franklin. It's an interesting one. If there wasn't a state called Virginia and someone proposed creating a state called Virginia today, you'd probably think, it doesn't really sound right. Isn't that weird?
1833. Delmarva is a peninsula on the east coast of the United States, occupied by Delaware and in part by Maryland and Virginia. At various times in history, residents of the Delmarva Peninsula have proposed that its Maryland and Virginia portions secede from their respective states.
But why?
They've actually gotten close, with Maryland's House of Representatives allowing them to secede in 1834, but then the state senate didn't allow it. They've tried full-on independence, then they just wanted to be fully part of Delaware in the entirety of its territory, but that hasn't happened, at least until now. Although more recently, in 1992, a Delmarva state party was created with the aim of creating a new state. Next, some people didn't want Washington to be the only president with...
What is the motivation, typically, for wanting to create another state? Is it that you don't really agree with the ideals of the state that you're already part of? Like maybe is it politics? I think it's probably money. Like what's the incentive of breaking off?
A state named after him. So they proposed the state of Lincoln. This is the one on the thumbnail. And what's weird is that this state would take over a big part of the state of Washington, except the shore, replacing the president. The flag would consist of the state seal, which is common in the US, and it would be very similar to Washington's state flag, except depicting Lincoln, and also with a big difference. Most state flags that depict the seal, if not all of them, have a blue background. This one would break the trend entirely by fielding red. At first, the idea was that the Panhandle of Idaho was to become its own state. This was proposed and refused in 1865. And so, to improve the proposal, I guess, they added East Washington to the proposed territory of this new state. And this was in 1901. A third proposal was made in the late 1920s, consisting of Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho, and Western Montana, failing once again. But more recently, new proposals have been made in 1996, 1999, and even in 2005. A fun fact is that Lincoln's name was also proposed for the states that were eventually named North Dakota and Wyoming.
No way.
These past three began in the 19th century, but there are also examples of the 20th century, and some not that long.
The State of Sequoyah. That's kind of a cool name.
Ago, like the State of Sequoyah. The State of Sequoyah was a proposed state to be established from the Indian Territory in the eastern part of present-day Oklahoma in 1905. Native Americans of the 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole in Indian Territory, proposed to create a state as a mean to retain control of their lands. Their intention was to have a state under Native American constitution and governance. They didn't have a flag, but they did have a seal, which I guess would later have been stamped on a flag like other states. It's somewhat strange, and I guess the 5 sections represent these 5 native tribes. The proposed state was to be named in honor of Sequoyah, the Cherokee who created a writing system in 1825 for the Cherokee language. And there was some historical reasoning to their idea. Starting in 1890, when Congress passed the Oklahoma Organic Act, the land that now forms the state of Oklahoma was made up of 2 separate territories: Oklahoma Territory to the west and the Indian Territory to the east.
Wow. Hold on. Is that a real name? Kickapoo. Interesting. Is it so Native Americans don't have a state, like an entire state that of their own right now? That's interesting. I would have thought that they would definitely have one. I know they've got territories, but territories and states aren't quite the same. On Native American territories, do they have their own policing systems? Like, are they fairly independent, or do they have their own jurisdiction? That's basically what I'm asking. Like, is it theirs to control and to do with what they please?
And this Indian Territory had a large Native American population. The proposal was presented to Congress by a North Dakota senator and a Missouri congressman, but they were refused. However, although the state of Sequoyah never came to be, its proposed constitution made an important contribution to Oklahoma history by its many similarities to the later Oklahoma Constitution. Then we have the state of Absaroka in 1939. Absaroka was an area in the US comprising parts of the states of Montana, South Dakota, and Wyoming, and it contemplated secession and statehood in 1939. The region's complaints came from mostly ranchers and independent farmers in remote parts of the 3 states who didn't like government control. They wanted to also increase tourism to the region, and they used that as a motivation for the proposed state, as Mount Rushmore, which was constructed in 1927-1941, would be within Absaroka according to some of the plans. Their proposed flag, if it was really this one, was just absolutely awful. A white field with a red triangle on the right and the number 49 on it.
That is so unimaginative. I mean, come on. Like, are you really just going to leave this whole area with no color in it? Like, yeah, that's not the best flag you've seen, is it?
Since they wanted to be the 49th state. There's not much information about this one. I guess it failed out of little local support and non-acceptance by the existing states like the others. But at one point, state license plates bearing the new name were distributed, but I guess that's how far they were able to get. It seems like the root of many of these proposed states is the idea of having their own rules, their own way of organizing local society, local laws, and defining the best way to make their territory prosper and keep their people safe. Speaking of keeping people safe, did you know that a lot of websites collect if you use the coupon code KNOWLEDGE? Now back to the video. We also have the State of Jefferson, which was proposed in 1941. This one would take up the mostly rural area of southern Oregon and North California. Their proposed flag was a green field with the state seal in yellow with 2 X's in the center.
Is there an American president, or was an American president called Francis Jefferson? I think so. Or some kind of like historical US figure.
These are known as the double cross and signify the 2 regions plus the sense of abandonment that they supposedly have by the central state governments in both southern Oregon and northern California. The name choice is because of Thomas Jefferson, the third US president who sent the Lewis and Clark expedition into the Pacific Northwest in 1803, envisioning the establishment of an independent nation in the western portion of North America that he dubbed the Republic of the Pacific. Hence the association of his name with regional autonomy. However, the generalized independence movement for the entire area, rather than this statehood movement, is known as Cascadia. Just like Lincoln, the name Jefferson has also been used for other proposed states. In the 19th century for the Jefferson Territory, roughly modern Colorado today, as well as in 1915 in a bill in the Texas legislature for a proposed state that would be created from the Texas Panhandle region. Another one was Deseret. Although it looks like desert and the territory in which it exists is partially desert, Deseret is actually named after a word from the Book of Mormon that means honeybee, which is why a beehive symbol is often associated with the proposed state. It's a region that the Mormons claimed in what is now Utah, plus several parts of other states, all of present-day Utah and Nevada.
Do you guys think that the 50 states that the US has now, like, that's it? Like, do you think it's like set now? Or do you think at some point there's going to be more states created? I don't know. I feel like it's probably... I think it would be hard to say there's never going to be more states. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if in the next 50 years we see, you know, maybe California splitting. Maybe, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think.
Large portions of California, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, Idaho, and Oregon, encompassing most of the territory that had been acquired from Mexico the previous year as the Mexican Cession. When Mormon pioneers settled in the Salt Lake Valley in 1847, then part of Mexico, they wished to set up a government that would be recognized by the United States. Their first idea was just to be a territory, but since they noticed that California and New Mexico applied for statehood, they did the same instead. Congress denied the request in 1849, but instead gave the Mormons the Utah Territory in 1850. But they didn't give up. And from 1862 to 1870, they still tried to pursue the idea of a Deseret state. However, the efforts began to fade away after the coming of the railroad, which opened the territory to many non-Mormon settlers. Their proposed flags vary and a few recreations exist, like this all blue in the style of the US with a circle of stars and one.
It looks a lot like the flag of Greece. Like, it really does. It bears a strong resemblance. I kind of like it. It looks kind of nice. I do think maybe making that star red would be would add a nice bit of color, bit of additional color.
In the center to represent this new state, or this one just like the US one, but with a different number of stars, one being bigger than the others, and 2 additional symbols, a cannon and the beehive. Next is Nickajack. The state of Nickajack would have consisted of portions of eastern Tennessee and northern Alabama. The name comes from Cherokee language, since the area was originally home to several Cherokee tribes. During the US's internal conflict, the people living in the region that would have occupied Nickajack wanted to secede because they wanted nothing to do with the war. They were, for the most part, poor farmers who didn't want to join the Southern Army, and they attempted to secede legally instead of just declaring themselves as a new state. But the war became too much, and it wasn't possible for them to ignore. Several of the citizens in the region ended up joining the Northern Army, and the new state never materialized. And finally, Texlahoma. The name makes sense since this state would have been made up of parts of Texas and Oklahoma. In 1935, 46 counties in northern Texas, along with 23 counties in western Oklahoma.
Texlahoma doesn't really roll off the tongue though. You know, you kind of have to slow down a little bit to say it. Texlahoma. Actually, no. Texlahoma.
Attempted to secede and form a new state. Their reasoning was partly the lack of road infrastructure in their states. I couldn't really find what happened, but I guess since it doesn't exist, it failed, although I'm not sure why. Other parts of Texas attempted to secede at some points as well. Like I mentioned, the Panhandle region tried to become its own state, also as the State of Jefferson in 1915, through a state bill that ended up failing. And those are a few of the proposed states that never got to exist in the United States of America.
Very interesting. Like, it does seem like, because at the start of the video, I asked, you know, what is the incentive? What's the drive for wanting to, you know, break off and start your own state? It does seem that it's independence or the ability to create one's own rules and, you know, just be able to make one's own decisions. That seems to be the main driving factor. There are probably monetary gains as well, but yeah, it does seem like that, you know, is the main reason. It's kind of interesting because the US is made up, it's pretty much like 50 small countries really. So you've got 50 small countries all with slightly different ways of doing things that then combine to make up the US, where, you know, the UK, we all pretty much, like all regions of the UK pretty much play by the same rules. Like we all live, you know, we all kind of have the exact same systems in place. The same tax, you know, is nationwide. The same, you know, the same ways of maintaining infrastructure. It's not like the US where what happens or how things are done in Texas may be wildly different to how things are done in California. So it's always cool to kind of get more evidence as to how things are different in the US. Really interesting video. I do think there will probably be new states. I don't think this is the end. I think I definitely see a state like California maybe. I see California maybe splitting up at some point. Let me know if you guys see that happening too, and just let me know your general thoughts on the video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.